It's 8:01. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. My name is Reena Bhatia. I'm with Proposal Helper. Thank you all for joining. I have with me Karen Long from Streamlined Government Contracts, who is going to be presenting to us on bid and protest, what to do before you run to your lawyers. We're excited to have her on. Before I turn it over to Karen, I just want to thank the Asian American Chamber. They're the host for this webinar. Proposal Helper is sponsoring it, but I am a board member on the Asian American Chamber of Commerce. And just a little bit about them. They facilitate business networking, and for those companies who are looking to diversify your supplier base, the Asian American Chamber of Commerce would be happy to help do the matchmaking and referrals to government contractors for subcontracting or prime bidding as you might need it. Just a quick spiel on what the benefits of their membership are. We will be sharing these slides with everyone after the webinar, so you'll get to review these. A disclaimer before we get started. This webinar is for information purposes only. We're not giving legal advice, even though we're saying what to do before you run to your lawyer. If and when you do decide to file a protest, you should consult your legal advisors for a full understanding of what you're doing. This material is also copyrighted. If anyone wants to use it, please send a written request to the Asian American Chamber of Commerce for rights to use this material in your presentations or internal use if you need to. With that being said, I'm going to take a quick second before I turn it over to Karen to see if we have anyone who is not able to view or has any questions. So still, Ben, I'm going to count on you. Are you able to view? Let me see if I can unmute the audience for a second. And I am not able to unmute you guys for whatever reason. Can we have someone in, all right, so Ben is able to still see it. I'm hoping all other participants are able to view the slides as well. So Karen, I'm going to hand this over to you at this point, and if you can just use the arrow key to move forward within your slides, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Reena, and good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us today, bright and early. I appreciate everybody's time, and I also want to thank the Asian American Chamber of Commerce and also Proposal Helper for allowing us to do this presentation. And again, I will just repeat my the disclaimer. I'm not an attorney, so this I'm not providing legal advice, but just some helpful hints that I thought would be useful to our audience. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Streamline and myself. Streamline was founded in 2012. Streamline assists small and mid-sized government contractors who do not need a full-time contracts manager or who may need surge support. Some of our services include negotiating TAs, subcontracts, preparing correspondence to contracting officers, tracking funding, estimates at completion, and we have a whole list of services. A little bit about me. I have, prior to starting Streamline, I worked for small and mid-sized government contractors for about 10 years and decided that I could be of more use and of more value starting my own business. So again, I appreciate everybody joining us today. So you can see the agenda, and we will just be touching on all of these topics very briefly. If you have any questions, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. So there are pre-award and post-award protests. And here are some examples of some pre-award protest examples. But I want to pause for a moment before getting into this and to say the first step would be when you get the solicitation is to ask questions to get clarifications because you may be able to avoid a protest. That being said, these are some examples of what might be some issues that would require a protest if you're not able to get the answers to these questions. So one example or one issue is overly restrictive requirements. So could be personnel requirements that are just above and beyond what would be required to do the job. Basically, requirements that are going to restrict the competition. Or past performance, asking for a lot of experience within, say, 1 year as opposed to, say, 3 years. Again, some of these qualifications may be inadvertently or not restrict competition, and that would be a pre-award protest. Invalid use of sole source. So there may be other companies that, and maybe even your company can provide the same service, but the government has opted to issue the sole source award. Maybe there is another product or tool that can accomplish the task, in which case there should be competition. Ambiguity or faulty evaluation criteria, or evaluation criteria that is contradictory. Incomplete statement of work that makes it difficult, if not impossible, to really put a cohesive proposal together that would also, that you would be able to price. So, for example, if there is a solicitation for a help desk, however, you have no idea if there are going to be 50 calls a day or 1,000 calls a day. Is it all over the U.S. or is it in one specific jurisdiction? Obviously, that's an extreme, but again, just trying to get the point across that if there's an incomplete statement of work in which you need more information to put together a bid, that would be a pre-award protest.
Let's take a quick second and see if there are any questions or issues that our participants are having. I see a couple. If anyone has questions, please, you can use the Q&A portion to ask us questions and we'll be happy to answer, but I'm assuming everybody is able to view our screen and hear Karen and all the information she's sharing. So, all right, you can continue.
Thank you. The important thing is, and we'll touch on this again, but you need to do a pre-award protest prior to solicitation. And as we go on in our slides, we'll touch on this again, but that is just something to keep in mind, whether again, it's going to be a pre-award or post-award protest. So these are, again, some examples of post-award protest. Unfair or unreasonable evaluation criteria. Not evaluating as advertised. So if they say that the technical is more important than price, but in the end, that's not the case, then again, that would be a post-award protest. Unequal treatment. So for example, if the government is giving information to one contractor and not the other. This is the reason why I would say always, and I can't think of an exception, but because I hesitate to use that word, almost always, questions are asked to be written in or emailed to the contracting officer, the point of contact for the solicitation, and then answered and distributed, usually as in a modification, to all potential bidders. awardee misrepresentation, disadvantaged status. So this may be if your company is disputing that the winner of the award is a woman-owned small business, if it's a set-aside, or if it's a small disadvantaged business set-aside, that the company is a small business under that NAICS code. Whether there is a small disadvantage, whether the company is truly a SDVOSB, if it is a set aside. And I'll just mention an aside here for a moment. They have some new Hub Zone rules for those of you who are in the Hub Zone program that were issued December 26th to loosen some of the requirements. So based on loosening some of the requirements, the government officials, or some of the government officials, are predicting that there are going to be more protests for Hub Zone set-asides this year. So again, as we started to talk about this earlier, and again, just want to make you aware, if it is a pre-award protest timeline, you need to submit it prior to the time of submission. If it is a down select, so that your company is being removed for competition because you're not in the competitive range, then you need to file within 10 days of debriefing or knowledge of grounds for a protest. And this would be, and these are, it's important to note that these are calendar days. So again, something to keep in mind.
I'm just going to mention here real quick on the slide, it says that there's an additional blog that was co-authored by Victoria Woodlock at Proposal Helper and Sai Alba at Polaro Mazza. It's posted on Proposal Helper's LinkedIn site that talks more about timelines on protests. So if somebody wants to get more information, you can always check out that blog as well.
So now back to before you run to your attorney, as we were talking about, so here are some things that you may want to check. And this is based on a colleague of mine who is an attorney, in terms of someone who went to her law firm. And basically they wanted to file a protest, and they said that the proposal was non-responsive. And so here are just, again, a few things to check beforehand. Was your proposal submitted on time? So again, in the government world, if the proposal is due at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time, that is not 4:01 or 4:02 Eastern Time. And I always recommend that companies take into account that there may be, the internet may be slow if a lot of people are trying to submit their proposals at the last minute. So to keep that in mind and to plan ahead in terms of the proposal submitter. The government is pretty unforgiving in that respect. The correct size font was used. So again, generally, there is a size font that is specified to be used. It's generally, or it's often different for the text versus the graphics. So again, are you compliant with that? The page count was not exceeded for each section. For resumes, if resumes are counted in the page count, and sometimes they are, sometimes they are not, depending on the solicitation, excuse me. And that the cover letter has all the items requested. So the DUNS number, the cage number, the point of contact, that it's addressed to the appropriate person, etc. Whatever the instructions say, that you have included whatever it asks to be included in the cover letter as such. The correct validity period, whether it be 180 days, 90 days, 60 days, it is important to make sure that your proposal is valid for that entire period. That also gives your company a clue as to when the government expects to award the contract. Now, the government can also come back and ask you to extend that validity period, but at least you can see what they have in mind. So that's just a helpful hint as well. And again, here are a couple other examples of making sure that your company submitted a responsive proposal, that you included the requirements in each section as they were requested. So for example, maybe it makes more sense for in your company's views or in your writer's views to include information under or in the understanding the problem section. However, if it says to put it in the management approach, you need to make sure that you're following the guidelines. Sometimes it asks for the same information in two different places. Sometimes it asks for the same information in two different ways. So again, it's just very important to make sure that you are responding to the solicitation. Using the resume format provided and completing, making sure that the past performance information is complete and accurate, and again, in the format provided. Usually or oftentimes there's a slight format change from solicitation to the solicitation. It's great that you can gather that information and you might have that information, but again, make sure that you are complying with the instructions. Okay. This is an example. This is something that Streamline has developed over time. Not to say that you have to use this one, but I did want to share it. So this is an example of a compliance matrix that, again, that Streamline uses. And we ensure that we've covered every section. So that includes the submission section, the volume, and then within each volume, the section in terms of what the instructions are. And you can see there's a checklist to show whether, in fact, your company has met that requirement, and that you can check it off in the proposal. The other point that I'll make in this is, although, yes, you want to, this is largely based on Section L, the instructions, and M, the evaluation criteria. Sometimes there is something stuck in another part of the solicitation or the RFP that, you know, inadvertently or not, that you want to make sure you cover. So yes, this is largely going to be based on Section L and M, but you also want to go through the rest of it as well.
So just being respectful of time here, Karen, we're about 8 minutes from ending the call or ending the webinar. So for those of you who want to stay longer, we, you know, certainly stay on. The webinar line will be open, but we'll let Karen move quickly through these.
Okay, thank you, Rena. Is your company an interested party? So an interested party would be those who may win or would have won if the if in fact you know, there is an issue with the awardee. And with that, I get this question often. So subcontractors cannot protest. They can assist the company that would be the prime in their protest, but they cannot in themselves submit a protest. So know your know what part of the FAR that the solicitation is based on. And this is important for a couple of reasons. If it is based on a negotiated FAR Part 15 negotiated, then it is, you must have a debriefing before you can file a protest. If it is FAR Part 8, then you are not entitled to a debriefing based on that FAR part. So And the other thing is you must request a debriefing within 3 days after the receipt of notice. And again, so these are a couple items in which you are entitled to. A debriefing within 5 days after receipt of the request, if reasonably practical. A debriefing in writing, orally, or by any other method acceptable to the contracting officer. The key point here is that the government gets to determine it. Significant weaknesses in the offeror's proposal as determined by the government. So again, that is the information that the government should be able and willing to provide to you. The overall technical rating and price of the successful offer, the overall ranking of all offers, summary of rationale for award, and the make and model of commercial items, if any, to be delivered by the awardee. These are a couple things that you are not entitled to at a debriefing. The point-by-point comparisons to the other offers' proposals. The trade secrets or other confidential manufacturing processes or techniques from other offers. Financial proprietary information, including indirect rates, or the names who provided the references for your company. And what I want you to take away from this slide is, if you are deciding or you are considering a post-award protest, timelines are of time is of the essence. Depending on the type of solicitation, again, whether it's a negotiating, procurement, commercial item, multiple award schedule, or task order, you have between 4 and 10 days. And also, depending on whether you're asking for a performance day, which means that work does not begin until the protest is resolved. There are different types of venues depending on the post-award protest. So it might be at the agency level, GAO, U.S. Court of Federal Claims. This is something to discuss with your attorney. There's pros and cons to both, to all. I will say that the U.S. Court of Federal Claims is the least common and also most expensive. But again, each of these venues has their, has a rationale for why you might want to consider them. And again, that's a discussion for you to have with your attorney. But the bottom line on this slide is time is of the essence, because you will need to make a quick decision about whether you are going to file a post-award protest. So I hope that this presentation was helpful for you. Again, do your homework and know the timelines. In the end, that can save you time and money. And if you have any questions from this presentation, please feel free to contact me directly at my email, or feel free to give me a call as well. So again, I want to thank Proposal Helper as well as the Asian American Chamber of Commerce for hosting us today. And I will turn it back over to Rena. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful presentation. Lots of information, and I know 30 minutes is just not enough time to go over all the details, but a quick overview, and I hope the audience got something out of this. You do have Karen's contact information. If you need to reach out to her after this call, please feel free to do that. If you are looking to promote your company, you're interested in being a panelist on our webinar and have some educational material to share, please feel free to contact me. We would love to have you on our next webinar. So thank you so much again for all of those who logged in. Let me just check if there are any questions here. There is one question, and it's a very lengthy one from Edward. Edward, Karen will take time after this webinar to go through it and see if she can answer that, or we will provide you with other resources whom you can reach out to. But I'm sure Karen can answer that. So again, thank you all for coming and joining this Friday morning webinar. We will be doing this on third Friday of each month. Next month, we are planning on having how to maximize your profits on projects. It should be a very interesting topic. We have a great panelist who's going to be on, and we'll advertise that and let you all know about it. So again, we'll be sharing the slides with all of you who joined in, who registered, so you have the slides with you as well. Thank you all for coming. We're going to end the webinar now.